Welcome back on the AM show with me, Sweetie Abochi. It's time now for the news review. As I mentioned earlier, development economist and senior lecturer at the University for Development Studies, Dr. Michael Ayamga, is our guest. Doctor, it's a pleasure to have you here. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Before we get into the newspapers, I would like to pick your thoughts. What do you make of the OSP's announcement yesterday that Cecilia Dapa's frozen accounts and monies be returned to her? What do you make of the situation?
Yeah, it was disappointing, but not unexpected, given that has been a consistent trend with the OSP, judging from Mr. AJ's issue with the contracts for sale that was uncovered by the Third Estate and your own network. A whole number of issues. And then this one too, you expected that at least there was some smoking gun in the sense that somebody had money from his house from unexplained sources, including those of dead relatives and all those things. Any of us with that kind of money under our best will still be under the full rigors of the law. I'm particularly getting disappointed that there is a consistent pattern of the OSP going after small fishes in the pond, prosecuting them, and then allowing the so-called big guys to get away with blatant thievery. So I have always maintained that he seems to be doing the work of an attorney for these accused persons rather than maybe trying to prosecute them. It is surprising that a lawyer of his standing didn't know that he should have brought on Iyoko even from the start, given that this was some kind of organized crime going on. I'm surprised at the charges he filed that were basically dismissed. And I'm also now worried that this case is not going to go anywhere like the La Bianca case, the AJ case, and so on. So it has become a trademark of the OSP, and I've already called that. I think it's a needless duplication of our effort. The other office should be scrapped so that we know that we're going to be dependent on the Attorney General for some of these things, and also our investigative bodies. If Iyoko has to do this, and then maybe the NIB have to be doing this, what is the use of the OSP then? That is the question I want to ask. If the OSP can get these things done, why should it exist? Earlier on, many of us had raised questions why we needed the Office of the Special Prosecutor when we had all these agencies, including SRAG and the rest, that if they were properly empowered and properly resourced, they could handle cases like this. The last minute resort to Iyoko to investigate something that is so blatant underscores the lack of merit for the existence of the Office of the Special Prosecutor. So I think that, yes, if Iyoko has to do it, then we shouldn't have the Special Prosecutor.
Well, yesterday I was listening to him, and it was interesting that he says the day we lose faith in that office is the day the soul of the country dies, and that after 7 months, they spent that 7 months to do extensive research, and it was based on all that investigation that they have concluded that they are not legally empowered to, handle the case. But anyway, do you have the newspapers with you, or do I? Okay, so let's get into the newspapers now. I have the Daily Guide. Let's look at the headlines. It says Ghana offers free visa to Africans. Processes underway. That is according to President Akufo Addo. When you go in later, it says Blinken bolsters West African security partnerships. Another headline says attacks in Nigeria. States leave at least 30 dead. I'm just going to do the headlines before we get into the main stories, and then I'll pick your thoughts on that. Okay, then to the Daily Guide paper now. It's the front page, we have Cecilia Dapa's case. Return Cecilia Dapa's money in 72 hours. Court orders OSP. Policeman dies in Galam operation. That's an interesting story there. And then Ashanti Gold UK to loan back Ghana's looted crown jewels. And not to the country, but to the Ashanti Kingdom. So we'll get into that also later. We also have Africa must develop strategies for change, according to Akufo Addo. In the Finder, we say step up value addition to generate prosperity to Africa. That's also according to Akufo Addo. The story is on page 2. And then ECOWAS Bank for Investment and Development unveils 2024 Investment Forum. There's also positive impact of IMF bailout on public will be gradual, according to Dr. Dumaya. And then in the world of sports, the Sports Ministry announces a strategic plan to revive the Black Stars. That's also a story we'll get into shortly. And then the Kolebu Teaching Hospital hold mass burial for unidentified bodies. Doctor, let's begin with Ghana's offer of free visa to Africans. Now, to get into the story, Ghana has started a process to ensure that all Africans entering the country's borders do so visa-free, President Akufo Addo has said. Now, the move, which would be implemented before the end of the year, is geared towards ensuring easy movement of goods, services, and people within the continent to foster continental free trade area. That is the AFCFTA. Let's get into that. Let's continue that story from page 3 now. Now, the 3-day business and policy dialogue, which has attracted representatives of heads of state and government and policymakers, as well as leaders of business and industry, has been described as an excellent initiative aimed at facilitating dialogue towards the AFCFTA initiative. It also provides a unique platform dedicated to mobilizing Africa's energetic private sector to own and drive the benefits of AFTA present. The story goes on to say that the continent is also endowed with the most youthful population, the president added, and he explained that it requires collective responsibility to turn prospects into productivity, and that code project generates prosperity for the people. The President Akufo Addo also expressed delight that Africa's private sector was ready, deliberate, and eager to ensure that the United African was attained, adding that it was time to focus on economic integration through the free movement of people, goods, and services. Dr. Yamga, what are your thoughts on this issue, on Ghana offering free visa to Africans under the AFCFTA agreement?
Yes, this is something you have to commend the president on. You would notice that many have been calling for this. We seem to find it easy to go to Europe than to travel within Africa. And if Ghana, one of the first countries out of Sahara to gain independence, is providing the leadership in this again, I think it's in the right direction. We should have done that earlier on and make sure that at least we also work hard to improve connectivity between Africa and West African states. And I have been saying that if you, for example, want to take a flight to Europe, you can get a flight straight to Amsterdam to most destinations in Africa. You want to go to some countries and you have to hop through 3-4 countries before you can go there by flight. So a 20-hour journey sometimes takes a whole day. So not only do we have to open up a visa entry requirements, we need to also work hard to improve our aviation and connectivity between African countries. It is one of the key ways to lessen our dependence on foreign countries, especially in the West, for some aid. I believe that if we improve intra-African trade, we are going to significantly put our destiny in our own hands. And some of these gradings, ratings, and so on and so forth, being shut out of capital markets and other things, may not have that telling impact on us like it is having now. If we were basically working within ourselves and creating the economic conditions that allow us to trade among ourselves and improve our products, I believe that we could significantly enhance economic growth in the continent. So I want to commend the president for taking the bold initiative. These things normally is a wait and see who does it first. I hope that there is some reciprocity here so that countries that will allow him to come into our country without visas should also do the same for Ghanaians. South Africa started recently. Most of West Africa, almost all, you have that free entry. In the Eastern African bloc, at least, we've traveled virtually to almost all the Eastern African countries without visa. So, and I'm happy that we are taking this initiative to extend it. It has become problematic, especially when you have some countries that are hosting very important entities and organizations in Africa still have visa requirements. You want to go to a place where the headquarters of the AU is housed and other things, and there are some difficulties when you get there in getting visa. It makes mockery of the call for African Union. So I agree perfectly with them that this is a best move, good leadership.
All right, before we continue with the papers, tomorrow the national ruling New Patriotic Party goes to the polls. And some party loyals are saying that this is a make or break for them because in 2016 they had majority of seats, and then they went in 2020 and they tied with NDC until an independent candidate aligned with them, which gave them the majority. What do you make of, what is your general overview of tomorrow's elections?
The first thing is that it's good for our democracy. We are still going to have primaries where you have certain MPs. And yes, we have seen some move to get some people to go unopposed and other things. And even though publicly you have had the announcements that people are going unopposed, grapevine news, and then also open anger by people who have been coerced to step down and so forth has taken place. And I still think that shows we still have some distance to go. It's not only MPP, other parties have similar issues. But I think that particularly for MPP, they are going into these elections on the back foot with a lot of headwinds. So if they do anything that weakens their parliamentary candidates further, they are going to be in for it. As you rightly stated, they are in parliament with a majority that disappears with just one member not coming to parliament. And that is a serious case here. The last election was seen as an indictment on the leadership of the president and his vice. And it is worrying to see some of the trends that are coming in constituencies, especially in areas like Bimbila and the rest, where you have a lot of jostling going on. One thing you need to keep in mind is that this is a lame duck period. You have a new leader of the MPP in waiting, and you still have a sitting president. Allegiances are shifting. People are feeling that, okay, the president is a spent force now. How do I project myself to become relevant in the next dispensation? Should there be one? And then there's also the issue of people seeing the writings on the wall and thinking that, hey, we may go to opposition, so we are going to face some lean period there. Can I get myself into parliament and maybe hibernate there whilst we are in opposition? And then there are others who think that they are about mere people, about mere group of guys who are not in parliament, so we need to replace people who are loyal to the sitting president. So because of that, there's intense jostling, there's intense campaigns for the seats. So I expect it to go down without incident, but we should look for surprises. We should expect them because not only are people dissatisfied with the president, they are dissatisfied with a good number of the MPs. And it is only in the interest of the MPP to allow people who are people to emerge rather than impose people by backdoor maneuvers. Yeah.
Well, we'll be there to cover and bring you all the details tomorrow, so stay tuned to join us. Doc, now let's go to the story in the Daily Guide where the Asante Gold, UK, is loaning back Ghana's looted crown jewels. It says, the story is on page 5. The UK is sending some of Ghana's crown jewels back home 150 years after looting them from the courts of the Asante king. What do you make of that situation?
Yes, I think that returning these artifacts are long overdue. And it's not only that. I think across Africa, stories of how many of our artifacts, our history, were taken from the museums and the places of about to Europe and particularly to the Great Britain. So returning this is just a gesture. We are also hoping that this will lead to some more effort to ensure that the economic imbalance created by colonialism is also righted. Restitution is very important here. You can't expect that for a significant part of the history of these countries, our resources were unjustly taken away to develop the center, while the periphery continue to extract and just dump it there. So not only are the artifacts the most important thing, I think that there should be concrete discourse towards compensating African countries for the resources that have been unjustly taken to develop the big center. So yes, it's better late than never. You go to Europe and you see a lot of African history there. You are wondering why these things are there. What are these things doing? And no matter how they try to embellish the stories and to make them look like they are preserving them, they are keeping them for posterity, it is plain slavery and thievery. These things belong to the people of Africa. It's our history, it's our heritage. And there is no justification for keeping them anywhere in the world apart from those who own them. So I think that is a good move, but it should go beyond just artifacts to a concrete measure to ensure that there's some form of economic restitution. Because, to be honest, what was taken away from Africa, if we had it, I believe that it would have changed our continent from and then. And many people normally say that we shouldn't dwell on the issues of slavery, we shouldn't dwell on colonialism. But the issue is that after these things, some systems have emerged that has continued to ensure that we are not out of the grips of these dents in our history. And we should work towards getting everything back, many of the artifacts, much of our history, and also some economic restitution.
What I find interesting is the wording of this story. It says it is loaning the artifacts to us, not returning them. So it's in a way admitting that it belongs to the UK and not us. You know, something that was taken from us. They're now loaning it just for, to put in our museums and that. And I'm afraid that if it's a loan, whoever is taking these artifacts or whoever is in charge of taking them back or taking this loan might be forced to acquiesce to the demands of these former colonizers. What do you think?
No, I think the terminology there is some way of keeping ownership of these things, trying to control who gets to pay to see them, trying to limit how we use them and where we put them. And it's just underscores the unjust world order that we are in, the double standards we are experiencing. At one point in time, people are advocating for the rights of certain people, and yet when it comes to other people, you tend to overplay your economic dominance and your might as developed countries. How to own back something to people that own it? That is something that my imagination. As far as we are concerned, there's nothing that shows that you bought it from us or we gave it to you. These were forcefully taken, and not only should these things be returning with an apology, they should be returning with some compensation to tell us that you are loaning them. It doesn't matter the language of that industry. It's still a slap on our backs, and I think that it just underscores the current global order that we are living in.
Well, thank you for that submission. Now, let's move on to the issue of Galam. A policeman has died. Now, the story is on page 3 of the Daily Guide. A police constable identified as Prince Amoa met his untimely death last Tuesday when the police vehicle he was on board with other policemen fell into a Galamsey pit during an alleged anti-Galamsey operation. On the topic of Galamsey, do you think we are doing enough, or is just talk shop? They're just saying that we are going to do things to curtail the issue, or, it's just something that is here to stay?
You don't want me to say
policemen, yeah, go ahead.
I have been very blunt, and I don't like this talk shows that we are doing about Galamsey. We know that the kingpin of Galamsey are in government. They are proposing, and military there are there protecting them. If you come from Galamsey, places like I come from in the Upper East region, you will notice that where the activity is intense, you have military and police there. And what they are doing is actually providing protection for people who are busily destroying our environment and extracting gold in the most unhealthy and unhygienic conditions you can think of. People who don't actually understand that apart from the gold being taken, the environment being degraded, they are creating a next generation of homeless and uneducated people. If you go to some of these gold mining areas, especially after they have moved on, you have kids there who don't know their parents. You have women there who don't know where their husbands are, and so on. So you have a whole community that is not indigenous to the people there. It was just a community that emerged because of the mining, and after they are gone, you have people still living there, nowhere to go, no measures to give them security. So that is one problem. Then the police, you see, most of the time are there, not going after these people. And sometimes when they go after them and you get them, some things change hands and then they go. So much as it's regrettable that our men in uniform have to die in activities like this in the line of duty. And I must say that I extend my sympathies to the bereaved family. We must state this thing as clear as it needs to be said, that you can't have a kingpin sitting in the ministry and expect the policeman taking orders, going into the communities and making an impact. It is a very serious situation. You have a network of politicians, traditional authorities, and local gangs now running these things. And one thing people don't know is that anytime you have a proliferation of these gold mining sites, it comes with guns, and the proliferations of guns also is leading to some unexplained violence in our streets, particularly in the Upper East region now. There are so many guns in the system because people are buying them. Somebody is keeping gold, he feels threatened, he just buys the gun, and they are keeping them. You get to the Galamsey site, and you see people openly displaying weapons that are not registered. You have military men and policemen there who don't seize them. And once in a while, they launch this charade that they are on an operation. I don't think that we are helping anybody. The earlier we discuss these things, and the more honestly and more frankly, the better it is for us. We are not fighting Galamsey. We are just managing it and then trying to make it look good in the eyes of Ghanaians and in the eyes of the international community. But serious crime goes down there. And it's sad that some policemen who may be taking orders from people who are sitting in their offices and enriching themselves have to die in this course.
What I'm curious about is what the police was actually doing there, because we've heard stories of police involvement in, actually helping propel this menace that's plaguing our country. Anyway, Doctor, let's move on to what could be our last story. Nana Akufo Addo grants KPMG's SML audit an extension. This is also from the Daily Guide newspaper. President Akufo Addo has granted KPMG's request for an audit extension on the transaction involving the Ghana Revenue Authority and Strategic Mobilization Ghana Limited. The audit and tax services firm was initially giving up to Tuesday, January 16th, to complete its inquiry into the GRA and SML deal. But now it has up to Friday, February 23rd, to submit its report to the presidency. What do you think is taking them so long to conclude on this matter, Doc?
Yeah, I didn't think they should come in the first place. I thought that the decision to employ KPMG, who happens to be a client of the Ghana Revenue Authority, was some kind of effort to try to sweep the damning revelations under the carpet. And you see, we are looking at things that border on criminality and corruption. Instead of us having a constitutionally mandated body to do this investigation, the president has come the gun to more or less rule that there is nothing untoward about it. There's no malfeasance. It is an auditing issue, and you go and bring a KPMG. So I think that the president's efforts are not going to help us uncover anything, because this is an auditing firm. It's going to do auditing. But we are talking of serious criminality here. We are talking of a breed of procurement protocols here. These are Ghanaian laws that have been broken. And I felt that legally mandated Ghanaian entities should have been involved in the investigation, if not Yoko, Shrag, or even the Office of the Special Prosecutor. At least would have gone there to do a few months and then clear everybody. But to put in KPMG and extend them, I don't think that it's going to come out with something apart from there is nothing that was done. It was just a few clerical and issues, some I's not dotted, some T's not done, but there's no malfeasance. That is the stage the president is setting, and I think it is rather unfortunate that we chose to go with the KPMG instead of getting some of our law enforcement
like the Auditor General even. Yeah.
This is not something that I expect anything meaningful to come out of.
We all know that there's some conflicts of interest there as well, because KPMG and GRA and the government even are all in bed. They have contracts that, have spanned over years. So however they orchestrate that, we're looking forward to see what the final report will bring. So now in the publisher, the Ghanaian publisher, there's a story about ECG MD allaying fears over electricity tax. Ghanaians say we are tired of the taxes. Let's see what the story says. The Electricity Company of Ghana has clarified that the new value-added tax on electricity consumers beyond the lifeline threshold is not being charged yet, which means there's still the possibility of it happening. But the ECG and the Northern Electricity Distribution Company on January 1st were direct. Yeah, this is just the background to the story. Speaking to one of the media houses, the managing director of ECG, Mr. Dubik Mahama, acknowledged that there are legal and operational challenges associated with the implementation of the tax. And so, although it is not yet in motion, there's the possibility of that happening. Dr. Ayamga, the issue of taxing electricity, most Ghanaians are saying that the government is taking a lot of money from us, but they're doing not nearly enough that they can do with these monies. And then the issue of tax above a certain line. What's your opinion on this? Saying that it is not yet in motion, and so our fears we should rest assured. But the use of the word yet seems to indicate that whether we like it or not, this is something that will happen. And some CSOs have actually defended that it's a government instrument. It's embedded in our constitution that we are supposed to pay tax on electricity.
Yeah, it is surprising to me as an economist to see that government is going to tax electricity, given that the cost of production everywhere has gone up. And it is at the IMF looking for money to help us revamp our production, especially at the micro and enterprise level. And you are trying to tax electricity even at domestic consumption. And what it's going to do is to increase the cost of doing business for these small businesses. These women selling soap below, people selling water and other things. All these things are going to go up. So these taxes are not geared towards people who earn money and don't pay taxes. These are people who are actually living hand to mouth. They live on the roadside looking for what they can earn to be able to put food on the table. These are the people these taxes are going after. And I think that it is unfortunate. It doesn't make economic sense at this point in time when you should be giving incentives for small businesses to grow. You are taxing them, increasing the cost of production. Everyone you ask on the streets now, every business is looking for an opportunity to go to Dubai and buy something and sell in Ghana. So you have virtually killed domestic production and manufacturing, and yet you expect that you are going to revamp the economy. Apart from that, the hardship. I passed through some homes now, and they put only one light on, and the rest of the places off because they cannot afford electricity. So people are already not being adequately served in terms of the electricity. They are rationing it to the point that they can barely put the bulb on. So to increase it was insensitive in terms of livelihoods of people, and then also not a smart economic policy, given that we need to boost domestic production, create revenues and profits so that we can tax. But I understand the government was desperate to show the IMF that it will improve our tax to expenditure tax to GDP, and then also getting our external creditors to believe that we are doing enough in the domestic front to warrant some agreement in our debt negotiation. And it worked. So even if we are forced by the TUC to withdraw it, which I expect is going to happen, if they don't withdraw it...
You think they'll withdraw this tax?
Of course, we all know the Trade Union Congress have given them an ultimatum to withdraw it. I'm wondering why they had to wait till this time. But if it was just to get the IMF to give us the money before they take that action, it's a smart move on their part. But I think that tax will be withdrawn. It will not see the light of the day because it doesn't make sense why we should be going to that level of taxing even households for electricity consumption.
The basic necessary.
It's a necessity now. It's not a luxury. I've been saying that for years now. The temperature has been increasing in northern Ghana now. You can virtually not live anywhere without a fan being on. So even in the rural households that they only used electricity to light one bulb at night, now they need fans and all those things. If they put these things on, they are going to exceed the threshold that we have set, and you're going to tax them. And you are not taxing a wealthy household, you are taxing a very poor household, a house struggling to put food on the table. And I don't think that for arguments of inclusive development, tackling inequality, and creating vibrant rural industries, this is the best way to go. We are talking of probably a government that has lost all control of the economy. And the economy is on autopilot and is just looking at where it can get a tax here, a tax there, and go on. No incentive for businesses, no incentive for investors, and more taxes. It is a very dire situation and a depressing country to live in.
I spoke with a member of parliament for Soto Manya constituency some time ago, and he said that it is something that has happened, so it's better that we all just share a little to keep the lights on. And my question was, how did we even get here in the first place? How did we come by such economic woes that the government has no option than to tax its citizens for the use of electricity in order to, settle its debts or, have a good face in front of our creditors? Anyway.
I think that, we all know how we got here. We borrowed ourselves deep into it, and we didn't use money. We wasted it in sectors that didn't actually enhance our productivity. And others kept the money under their beds, and they are made to work. And at the end of the day, we have to pay for it. If I'm paying for electricity, yes, I don't mind. I'm using it. I'm middle class. Maybe I need to contribute my quota, which I've been doing overly, and paying my fair share of taxes. But to go to this extent of burdening small businesses, and where I come from, the community I live, every person they pay in electricity affects profit, affects the business, and they may not be able to feed their children and send their kids to school. So I don't want us to think that it is people trying to resist taxes. I don't think that the people who are telling them impose these taxes and so on and so forth have taxes at this level. The point that very poor households now have to face the choice between sleeping in darkness, not having a livelihood, or paying tax. It is taking us back to the pre-Rawlings era, before Rawlings, out of his vision for creating a vibrant rural sector, set electricity throughout Ghana. And I remember people at a certain point in time were arguing why he was spending so much to extend electricity to rural areas. Though that activity has meant that rural industries and rural areas have seen significant development. And the only thing they could have done is to at least keep the lights on in the house of the poor. What the president is doing is taking food off the table of poor people and putting off their lights so that they have to go to bed hungry, early and in darkness.
I think all this just speaks to, what we were calling the dead goat syndrome. No matter how loud we cry, it doesn't seem like government is interested in hearing what we, the citizens, have to say, or show some empathy towards what they're doing to us that's impoverishing the country and the citizens. Now, on the issue of what is working in Ghana, let's talk about football, AFCON, Black Stars. The sports ministry is saying that they want to diagnose Ghana's early exit. I don't know what's there to diagnose anyway. For context, young people like myself, for nearly over 40 years, we've never actually seen a Black Stars win any African Cup of Nations or any tournaments for that matter. Meanwhile, Ghana Black Stars was a name to contend with. That was a whole lifetime ago. And now we are here, and the ministry is saying that they want to diagnose what caused the early exit. I'm interested to know what you think about this. What's there to diagnose?
I don't think the ministry has to do it. I think that what we need are new faces in football that everybody trusts. I'm into football. I'm not a newcomer. I just chose to stay on the fringes. And mostly, I speak with these players. I remember I was coming from Amsterdam, and there were 4 Black Stars players there. One of them is a hero of my kid. He's been sending him videos. So I got to him and we were chatting. And these were people who were coming on national duty. They were coming to play a match. I think it's either Cape Verde or Comoros. And they were like, normally, they just come and then they are risking their careers and trying to end their livelihood should something go wrong, and people are just there taking fat allowances and taking girls to hotels on the back of their sweats. And what they were saying, well, I just asked myself, these are people who are in a plane on the way to play a game for Ghana, already having this thing at the back of their minds. What do you think is going to happen? And you can understand, I cannot come to camp and any wrong move I make may end my career. And for every Black Star player, you have a huge entourage of people. And when they are even in camp with these guys, they so indiscreet that the vulgar display of the money that the sports ministry is allocating for tournaments is disheartening. And you talk to players and they tell you that honestly, they come in because there are ramifications if you don't come back. They are not coming in to take the risk that they should take. So I believe that we need a thorough inquisition of why we have some of the best players. Can you imagine Inaki scoring against Barcelona of all teams, my team for that matter, and coming to Ghana and then he is a pale shadow of himself. And also some of the things here, and I'm going to say it here, I know some people will not be happy, but they had a Black Stars technical team. One who was Chris Hutton, the second was Borton, and then Didi Dramani. Now there are some news going around that Chris Hutton more or less was the stranger in the group of 3. The rest were well embedded within the circles of the GFA. And you can imagine having your assistants who probably have the ear of the president of the association, or for want of a better word, who have the president in their pocket. So you have to imagine who will do whose bidding. And it's unfortunate that Putin found himself in that arrangement. But all we need to do is that when we are going for tournament, we need to project some integrity. When the Black Stars see people walking around them as managers, they need to see sacrifice, they need to see integrity, they need to see honesty. You can't be doing things that are transactional in the presence of these players, and then you expect that when they go to the field of play, they should put in all the tackles, take the risk for the country, when they know that some people are in there just to line their pockets and benefit. So I believe that our game goes beyond the issues of just training and identifying the right players and the coaches. There are systemic issues that we need to be honest and we need to deal with. And it's unfortunate my good friend Kurt has to find himself in this water. But I have to say he has nothing to lose. He's in the second term of his office. His legacy is important. I think that he needs to let down the hammer, offend a few people, and put in at least a plan to revive our national team. Let's forget of the next 2-3 AFCONs, and then get a coach, give him a 10-year mandate to rebrand our football. Apart from that, let's do some serious inquisition of why our players fall for their teams, play very good football for their teams, but when they arrive in Ghana, they are something else. I was watching the game, and it was disheartening. Inaki Williams was in pole position to score. Jordan decided to still take a touch. And when his brother entered in there, he decided to start whipping process prematurely. What are you trying to show? This is a national team. You win and lose together. Why do you go in there and you think that you have a certain image to protect? It's your father that won a trophy, not yourselves. And I got really furious with some of these. Who are we begging? I believe that they need people like us in front of these guys to tell them that you can go to hell if you don't want to play for the national team. I think we beg them too much and we fear losing. So we pamper these people and they control us. I think that a church should be able to walk into that room and fear enters these players. When we were young people, that is what happened when coaches entered, when the president of the GFA visited the team. When even the sitting president or the minister of finance goes into there is discipline because they know these were people who embodied productivity and integrity. But we fear losing so much that we almost allow these people to trample on us. I want to see a GFA president who is not afraid of losing games, going to these guys and letting them know that they are in a privileged position. It's a privilege to have your name go down in history. And when you enter camp, we are not coming to beg you to play. If you don't want, get the hell out of it. And when we lose, we lose.
You know, in my opinion, if I was a betting woman, I would have said that if we had gathered some 20 guys from Nima back here to go and play for Ghana Black Stars in this AFCON, we would have been in the tournament still and we'll come back with the trophy because they'll be playing for something, you know. They're not comfortable. But thank you. That's all that time will allow us to get into today. Dr. Michael Ayamga is a development economist and senior lecturer at the University for Development Studies, and he was our guest for the news review. It was a pleasure having you. Thank you so much, Doctor. Now, up next, we continue from sports. We have another edition of Prime Take with Fentino, who speaks with Ben Nuno Mensah, president of Ghana Olympic Committee. Stay for that. We'll be back shortly.